In this After Effects tutorial, we will learn how to animate a viral reel from scratch. The animation we'll create today is inspired by one of Snipsy.ae's fantastic reels. Here's an example of what we are going to do.
Everyone is chasing shortcuts. They look for the magic pill. But here's the truth, there is no magic pill. It's about daily grind and hard work.
If you are interested in learning motion graphics and want to know the techniques to make this type of animations, stay and watch this class until the end, because I will explain everything to you step by step. By the way, if you want to support the channel, in addition to your likes, you can also do it from my Patreon page. There, I share with you all the projects I use in the tutorials, so you can keep practicing and learning. I leave the link in the description if you want to take a look. Okay, so let's get started. As always, the first thing to do is import all the files and save them in a folder. On this composition, we'll create a new one called Reel 1080 by 1920. Vertical format, 30 frames, and 15 seconds is enough. By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. But it's not just a course in which I show you how to animate a sequence in After Effects, and that's it. But I show you the entire procedure that I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look. Right-click. Create a solid that will serve as the background, the size of the composition, and almost white in color. Again, right-click. New Shape Layer. This will be called Star Round. And we'll create that black star we saw in the reel. We'll add a polystar and a fill. We'll set the color to almost black. Here, we'll expand the polystar options. We'll set the inner radius to 130 and increase the outer radius quite a bit, leaving it at 600. We'll set the inner roundness to 200. And the outer roundness, which is so that the points of the star look round, we put it at 100. We now have our star. For now, I'll leave it here so it doesn't get in the way. Now I'm going to write some text. With Ctrl plus Alt and the Home key, we center the anchor point, and with Ctrl plus Home, we also center it in view. For this font, I'm going to use the font called Helvetica in its bold variant. I'm going to make this text smaller. Although for the line above, I'm going to change the variant. Okay, I like it that way. With the rectangle tool, we're going to create a shape, more or less like this. We center the anchor point and also center it in view. We'll call this box. We remove the fill and add a 5-pixel stroke. If you want in the stroke options, you can click where it says dashes to make the line dashed. We need to place the anchor point in the upper left corner. So we select the Pan Behind tool and hold down the Control key. It will automatically stay in place. Now we count 10 frames forward, expand the scale with the S key, and mark a keyframe. 35 frames later, we mark another. In the first one, we set the scale to 0. Smooth the keyframes and shape the curve. we set the influence to 100% for this handle. Okay, let's continue. Now we're going to bring in the layer called cursor. We adjust the scale and position it here so that the cursor tip is here in the upper left corner, more or less there. We can also do this animation with the Create Nulls from Paths script, but it will be much easier this way. We expand the position and mark a keyframe. We need to place this one above this other one. Here, at this point, we move the cursor to the other side. We smooth the keyframes and also set the influence to 100%. Perfect. At the beginning of the timeline, we select the cursor and move it more or less around here. Now with Shift plus S, we also expand the scale. We mark a keyframe and place it below this one. At the beginning of the timeline, we set the scale to 0. We set the influence on this handle between 60 and 65, more or less. And so, we have this animation. Okay, let's continue. To reveal the text, we'll duplicate the layer called Box, and we'll call it Box Matte. We expand the options, activate the fill, deactivate the stroke, and color it red. Now we have to make the text layer an alpha matte of this red shape. If the track mattes don't appear, use F4 to expand them, and now, using Pick Whip, we parent it to this layer. There it is. We're going to place this star layer here, at this vertex. If we hold down the Control key, it will automatically stick. With Control plus D, we duplicate it and place this copy above. If we want, we can make it a little smaller. We're also going to make a small animation for the star, but first, we need to convert the layers to 3D. Select them and activate the cube icon. Since they all belong to the same scene, we're going to paint them the same color. Now, in the star, expand the rotation with the R key. With Alt pressed, click on the Z rotation clock and type time by 50. This means it will rotate 50 degrees per second for the entire duration of the composition. Right-click, copy only the expression, and paste it to this other star with Control plus V. Continue. Right-click, New Camera. This one will be 50 millimeters and have one node. Again, New Null Object. We'll also convert it to 3D and parent the camera to it. At the beginning of the timeline, we display the position and select a keyframe. Now we move to second 215 and right there, select another one. In the first one, we're going to zoom in a bit. We'll set a value of 900 on the Z-axis. We'll smooth the keyframes and adjust the influence of the curve so that it starts very quickly and gradually slows down. We'll position ourselves on this keyframe and make another camera movement. With Ctrl+D, we duplicate the null and press U to show the keyframes. We'll delete these two and mark a new one. This animation will start at second 115, so we'll place the keyframe there. This way, before this animation ends, the next one will already start and the camera never stops. We need to parent the previous null to the new one. Now we'll position ourselves on this one and move everything up, animating along the y-axis, more or less until this star's here, at this vertex. We'll set a value of 2800 and smooth these two keyframes with F9. If you want, you can set the influence to 100% for this handle and leave the movement like that. But, as those of you who know me know, I often like to set 3 instead of 2 keyframes, so the camera movement is much smoother. Before setting the third keyframe, I'm going to go to the Assets and bring in the file called RedPill. We'll place it down here, also convert it to 3D, and center it with Ctrl+Home. This Ctrl+Home command basically places the layer right in front of the camera viewfinder. I'm going to press Ctrl+Z to show where it was before. When we converted it to 3D, it stayed in the center of the composition. But notice where the camera is. So when you press Ctrl+Home, it's placed right in front of the viewfinder. I wanted to clarify this because I use this shortcut a lot throughout the tutorial. Now let's scale it down a bit and set it to 65%. Let's bring in this other file called Grid. We'll place it below the RedPill. Also adjust its scale and convert it to 3D. With Ctrl+Home, we center it in the viewport. With the Ellipse tool, we'll create a mask. We'll position ourselves more or less in the center and, holding down the Ctrl and Shift keys, draw a perfect circle. We'll set the mask's feather to 200 and set this layer to multiply mode. Although we might make it a little larger. Okay, that's perfect. We'll parent this RedPill layer to the grid. Now, I'll select this keyframe, and with the Alt key pressed and the arrow keys on the keyboard, I'll move it 2 frames to the right, 1 and 2, and without moving the head from there, I'm going to mark another keyframe. And I'm going to place this one right at this point. As I always say, I use this timing and these values because, after several tests, they're the ones that have worked best for me. I select all 3 again, press F9 to smooth them, and give them a little bit of shape. Here, I double-click and activate the continuous option. I set the influence to 90%. With the Alt key pressed and the mouse wheel, we can zoom in or out. Okay, I'm going to place this handle around here. I double-click on it and set the influence to 50%. So, instead of the camera stopping at this point, it's still moving here in this section, although increasingly slower. This makes the camera movements look much smoother and more fluid. A little further on, at the second 301, I'm going to mark a keyframe to maintain the position there. Now I'll advance to 505, and I'm going to move the Greek Y axis again. Here I'm going to set it to 2200. Select these two keyframes and smooth them with F9. For this one here, we'll set the influence to 100%. And for this other one, we'll set the influence between 70 and 72, so that the highest peak of the animation is right there, where we have the head, at 326, right there. At this highest point, which is where the animation goes fastest, is where we'll make the cut transition. Okay, we'll position ourselves here on this keyframe and select the grid layer. P key to display the position and mark a keyframe. And a little further ahead, we'll send these two layers to the back, the grid layer and the red pill layer. We'll set a value of 500 and smooth this keyframe with F9. This way, when the camera moves up, these two layers continue to zoom out. Of course, the timing of this keyframe still needs to be adjusted. For now, we'll leave it at that point. Now, I'm going to return to the highest peak of the animation at 326. And I'm going to cut all these layers right there with Control plus Shift plus D, or you can also come to Edit Split Layer. We'll delete the previous layers and adjust the keyframe to the end. Let's preview what we've done so far. If we want, we can also duplicate this star and place it at the bottom. We can make it a little bigger. Let's continue. We're on the last keyframe, and now, from this layer called Frame, we're going to create a new composition and save it in its folder. Below this layer, we'll place this image. Press S, and we'll scale it down more or less around that point, so that the edges aren't visible on the outside, but it's not empty inside either. That's perfect. We'll return to the main composition, and from this keyframe, we'll bring in the composition. We'll place it below the camera and convert it to 3D. With Control plus Home, we'll center it. No, that wasn't it. Sorry, I made a mistake. I'll press Control plus Z and bring in the one called Frame. I place it below the camera, convert it to 3D, and with Control plus Home, center it in the composition. I set the scale to 45%. Okay, but this composition has to start right at the cut. There you have it. Now, with the pen tool, we're going to make a shape like this. We'll remove the fill and increase the thickness quite a bit. Around that point. We'll call this layer Stroke and place it above the composition. Since it belongs to the same scene, we'll also give it the same color and cut it right at the transition. We convert it to 3D, and with Control plus Home, center it in the view. Now, let's make some adjustments to the stroke. We'll unfold it where it says Stroke 1, and in Taper, we'll increase this value quite a bit. We'll leave it at 100. Okay, I think it's pretty good. Now we go to the body text composition. We select the text, copy it with Control plus C, and return to the main composition. And with the text tool, we create a text box. Before pasting it, we activate the safety margins to use as a reference. I think this might work. With Control plus V, we paste the text. We convert it to 3D, and as you know, with Control plus Home, we center it in the view. We place the layer here with the scene layer, and we also change the color. Okay, this looks great. Let's write another text. We also convert this one to 3D, and with Control plus Home, we center it again in the view. We place it at the top. I'm going to change the variant of this word, and I'll also make it a little bigger. We'll change the color of this text layer, along with the scene layer, and we cut it right where the transition is. By the way, I'm going to put a marker here. We're going to do a little animation on this text layer. We'll animate its opacity and also add the position property. We'll move it down a bit, set it to 50, for example, and the opacity to 0. We'll expand the range selector, set the offset to -100, mark a keyframe, and a little further down, set it to 100. Now the animation looks a little strange. We need to make some adjustments. In Advanced, we switch to Words, and from Square, we change to Ramp Up. Okay, now it looks much better. Still, we need to give it a little more flow. We set the ease high to 30 and the ease low to 70. It looks perfect. I like it there. We need to synchronize this text animation with the audio. I'm going to bring it in, which I have over here. We'll position this layer so it starts at frame number 5. Okay, let's preview it to see how we're doing.
Everyone looks for shortcuts. They look for the magic pill. But here's the truth, there is no magic pill. It's about data. But here's the truth, But here's the truth, there is no magic. But here's the truth, there is no. But here's the truth, there is no magic pill. But here's the truth, there is no. But here's the truth, there is no magic. But here's the truth, there is no magic.
Now we'll do the next step. We'll unfold the keyframes and position ourselves on the last one. With Ctrl+D, we duplicate the null, and with the U key, we show the keyframes. We delete all of these and mark a new one in position. This animation will start at the second 410, so we place the keyframe there. We parent the previous null to the new one. From this point, we move to 610 and zoom in on the Z-axis. We set a value of -1500, smooth the keyframes and right-click, change the influence. Set this one to 70% and the other to 50%. We should end up with a curve like this.
But here's the truth, there is no magic pill. But here's the truth, there is no magic pill.
Okay,
Here's the
it looks
truth,
great.
there is no magic pill.
Right-click, create a shape layer, and call it Circle Matte. We don't convert it to 3D or anything, we'll leave it like that. We unfold the options and add an ellipse and a fill. We also have to cut this layer right at that point. Or not, we'll leave it below this keyframe. We expand the scale with the S key, select a keyframe, and here below it, we'll increase the scale until the shape covers the entire composition space. We'll leave it at 2330, around there. In this first one, we set the scale to 0, soften the keyframes, and apply the same influence as these two. Right-click, Keyframe Velocity. Here we set it to 70, and here, 50.
Here's the truth, there is no magic pill. Truth, there is no magic pill.
Okay, and that's how we've created a really cool transition, you'll
Here's
see.
the truth, there is no magic pill. It's a
Let's bring in this other file called round peel, place it up here. We do need to convert this layer to 3D. From this last keyframe, center it in the viewport with Ctrl plus Home and scale it to 30%.
There is no magic pill. Truth, there is no magic pill.
We need to make this aspirin layer a matte alpha of the matte circle, so we use Pick Whip to parent it to this layer. These two, which already belong to the next scene, are going to be painted the same color, and we're also going to cut them right at that point.
Truth, there is no magic pill. It's the truth, there is no magic.
It's not quite visible yet because the background is missing. Right-click, New, Solid. Give it a name and a color that's almost black. Place this layer above the matte circle, change its color, and cut it at this point. We don't need to make it 3D or anything. We just use Pick Whip to make it a matte alpha of the matte circle.
Truth, there is no magic pill.
Look at this cool
Here's the
transition.
truth, there is
It
no
really
magic
looks
pill.
incredible.
But here's the truth, there is no magic pill. It's about, here's the truth, there is no magic pill. The truth, there is no magic pill.
Well, look, there's something I don't like very much here. The solid background is slightly visible at the edges of the circle. Notice, if I deactivate it, it's no longer visible. Although these are minor details, they jar a bit. So I'm going to move slowly through the timeline. And when the background starts to appear above the pill, I'm going to cut the layer right there. That way it won't be visible at the edges anymore.
Here's the truth, there is no magic pill. Here's the truth, there is no magic pill.
Okay, let's continue. The next thing I'm going to do is duplicate this text layer. Ctrl plus D and move it up. I'm going to place it here with the layer group colored green. Ctrl plus Home to center it in view. I'm going to make this body text white. You can use another color here if you want, but for this tutorial, I'm going to leave it the same. Notice that the text is visible there, so we need to matte alpha the matte circle.
Truth, there is no magic pill. It's about truth, there is no magic pill. It's about daily truth, there is no magic pill.
Let's write another text above the pill. Here I'm going to put no magic pill. The font will be the same, but in bold. We need to convert this text layer to 3D with Ctrl, Alt, and the Home key. We center the anchor point, and while we're on the last keyframe, we center it in the viewport. I'm going to scale it a bit. Okay, that's where I like it. We'll place this text layer along with the other layers in its scene in green. With it selected, we'll use the ellipse tool again. We position the cursor in the center and create a mask, just like this one, that protrudes slightly beyond the circumference of the pill. If we hold down the Ctrl and Shift keys, we'll create a perfect circle. Now we go to the text options, and in Path options, we select the mask we just created. There's the text applied to the mask. We activate the reverse path option. Perfect. Now, with the R key, we adjust the correct rotation. In Z, we set it to 180 degrees. Just like before, so it can't be seen from this side, we also need to matte alpha the circle. There it is.
There is no magic pill.
Look at this cool transition. Let's preview everything and see how we're doing.
Everyone looks for shortcuts. They look for the magic pill. But here's the truth. There is no magic pill. It's about
Okay, this looks spectacular. Let's keep moving the camera. We'll display the keyframes for this null, position ourselves on the last one, and before duplicating it, we'll bring in another file we have here, the one called blue pill. We'll change the color of this one since it belongs to another scene, and we'll place it, well, for now, we'll leave it there. We'll also convert it to 3D. Control plus Home to center it in the view. Sorry, we'll place it just below this keyframe. Again, Control plus Home and leave it centered there. Now we'll activate two views to position it correctly. What I want is to bring it a little closer to the camera. As always, let's set the exact values. For Z, negative 2,440. Okay. And now on the x-axis, we'll move it to the right. We'll set it to 915. Through this capsule, we'll transition to the next scene. I'm going to scale it down a bit. I'll leave it at 90%. Perfect. Now, while on this keyframe, we're going to duplicate the null. Press the U key and delete these keyframes. This other movement will start at 527. So right there, we mark a keyframe at that position. Now we move to 715. Important, parent the previous null to the new one. Here, in this one, what we're going to do is animate the x-axis. We're going to set a value of 1,270. With F9, we smooth the keyframes. I'm going to repeat the previous process. I select this one, and with the Alt key pressed and the arrow keys, I move it 5 frames to the right. Without moving the mouse from there, I mark a new one. Now this keyframe, I'm going to set it to 905. I'll select them all again, F9, and I'm going to give the curve a little bit of shape. We double-click, activate the continuous option, and set the influence to 65. Now we move this handle up a bit. Here's the same. Double-click, and set the influence to 65%.
magic pill. It's about daily grind and hard magic pill. It's about daily grind and hard magic pill. It's about daily grind magic pill. It's about daily grind and
Okay, so it looks great there. Now, above this keyframe, we'll set up the final scene. Here I'm going to write another text. And I'm going to place this layer above this other one. I'll also cut it at this point and change its color. We need to convert it to 3D. We center the anchor point and center the layer in view. We'll make it a little bigger. Don't worry about all this stuff you see here, because later we'll leave the scene very clean. We duplicate this text layer with Ctrl D, and here we type hard work. I'll change the color of this one to differentiate it, although I'll leave it deactivated for now. Now, without having any layers selected, we'll repeat the same animation from the beginning, which is the box where the cursor appears, opens it, and at the same time reveals the text. In this case, I'm not going to add the cursor. I'll just do the animation of the box, but you can also do the animation of the cursor, since it's the same as the one from the beginning. I'll lower the stroke quite a bit. I'll leave it at 5 points and with a white color. This will be called Box 02. We'll place it on top and convert it to 3D. Control plus Home to center it in the view. Now we also need to place the anchor point at the top left corner. With the Pan Behind tool and the Control key pressed, we can move the axis and place it right at that corner. Press S, mark a keyframe on the scale. Move this one back a bit and mark a new one. In this one, set the scale to 0. Smooth and shape the curve a bit.
Work.
Well, we still need to adjust the timing of this animation. For now, we'll cut this layer there.
It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard work. About daily grind and hard work. Daily grind and hard work.
Okay, that might work. Duplicate this layer and rename it Box Mat. Here in the content, we'll turn the fill back on and deactivate the stroke. I'm going to leave only the one called Hard Work and deactivate the others for now. We need to make this one a matte alpha of Box Mat.
It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard work.
Okay, perfect. And this other one, the one called Daily Grind, we also need to make it a matte alpha, but this time the matte alpha is inverted.
About daily grind and hard work.
Okay, this looks great.
And hard work. About daily grind and hard work.
The one that says hard work might be a little more centered there. And a little larger. Okay, there it is.
It's about daily grind and hard work.
We'll position ourselves on the last keyframe and duplicate the null to make one last movement. Press U, delete the previous ones, and mark a new one here, at the highest point of the animation. We'll position ourselves there and mark a keyframe at this position. Don't forget to parent the previous null to the new one. Now we'll go to second 11 and in Z, we'll set it to negative 1,250. We can leave these two keyframes linear if we want, or we can also smooth this one out if we want. I'm going to leave them linear.
About daily grind and hard work. About daily grind and hard work.
Now, to give this transition a little more dynamism, we'll do a little animation on the capsule's rotation. Well, we're not really going to do an animation. What we'll do is parent the Z rotation to the position of this null.
It's about daily grind and hard work.
And notice, the faster the null animation goes, the faster the capsule's rotation will be.
It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and
The thing is, this rotation is very exaggerated, so we're going to slow it down a bit. We press the E key twice to display the expression. And here at the end of the expression, we're going to put the divide bar, and we're going to divide by 4. Let's see what it looks like now.
It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard.
Okay,
It's
now it
about
looks
daily
spectacular.
grind and hard. It's about daily grind.
Although notice, at first it looks a bit diagonal. But if I want to make the capsule horizontal, I can't, so at the end of the expression we have to add plus value, and then we can adjust the value we want.
Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard.
Okay, it looks pretty good there. The only thing is, instead of dividing by 4, I'll divide by 5 to test it out.
It's about daily grind and hard work.
I'm going to extend the timeline a bit to better see what's happening. Notice that here, below this keyframe, it's diagonal. So I'm going to make it horizontal there.
Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work.
I'm going to divide by 4 again, because it doesn't seem to be working the way I want. And here, I'll set the position back to horizontal. Let's see now.
It's about daily grind and
Okay,
hard work.
now it looks perfect.
It's about daily grind and hard.
I'm going to make this text here a little smaller. By double-clicking on the mask, we can reduce it a bit. And maybe the text size too, for example, to 35. Notice, when the capsule passes in front of all these layers, we'll cut them right at that point, so they're no longer visible. More or less at that point. We select all of them. Well, not all. Not the one with the matte circle in the background, just these 3. And go to Edit, Split Layer, and cut them there.
Daily grind and hard work. Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work. Pill. It's about daily grind and hard.
And this first text, which is visible a little there, we'll also cut it more or less at that part.
Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work. Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work. Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work. Pill. It's about daily grind and hard work.
If you want, you can also add a little star at the end. We come down here, duplicate it with Ctrl+D, and move it up. We place it here with this group, and start it right here, in this part as well. And with Ctrl+Home, we center it in view. The color is white. We're going to place this one here, at this vertex. Let's see how it looks there.
It's about daily grind and hard work.
Okay,
It's about
perfect.
daily
I like it
grind
there.
and hard work. It's about daily grind and hard work.
Well, basically, we already have the camera animation. Now it's a matter of adding some effects to improve the look of our reel a little.
Cuts. They look for the magic pill.
Let's start with the red capsule. To create the shadows, I'm going to use the Shadow Studio plugin. But I'll also explain how to create shadows without it, and how to achieve a very similar result. Before touching the settings, I'm also going to create a small animation for the red capsule. Press the R key, and here in Rotation Z, I'm going to write an expression. Hold down the Alt key, click on the clock, and type time times 30.
They look for the magic pill.
But more or less around this point, I want it to be almost vertical. The thing is, if I move this value, it won't let me. So, at the end of the expression, we have to add plus value. Now we can position it however we want. But notice something else. If we rotate the capsule, the shadow also rotates. And even if we rotate it, this shadow should always point in the same direction. So, let's do the following. Here in the angle, hold down the Alt key, click on the clock, and now we're going to parent this pick whip to Rotation Z. But we have to set this expression to negative, so at the beginning we add the minus sign. And now look, even if I rotate the capsule, the shadow always stays in the same direction. Here in the angle, I'm also going to set the plus value. I like it there. Now I'm going to leave the master opacity at 15.
Cuts. They look for the magic pill. Cuts. They look for the magic pill.
Okay, perfect.
They look for the magic pill. But here's the truth. They look for the magic pill. But here's the truth. Everyone looks for shortcuts. They look for the magic pill.
Well, I told you before that these shadows can also be achieved without this plugin, so I'll explain how to do it. I'll deactivate this effect and apply the one called Radial Fast Blur. But we have to duplicate this layer and remove the effect from the one above. Now, to the one below, we apply the Fill effect. The color black. And now in the options, we can direct the shadow. We have a handle that can also be moved like this. Then, we lower the opacity of this layer a little, and that's it. We have practically the same effect as with the plugin. Well, I'm going to leave it as it was, so I'm going to delete this layer. And on this one, I'm going to reactivate the effect. By the way, with Ctrl+C, I'm going to copy it and paste it into the frame as well. I select the composition and paste it with Ctrl+V. Let's add another effect. Right-click New Adjustment Layer. This one will be called Chromatic Aberration. And I'm going to apply the Quick Chromatic Aberration effect. This is a plugin that doesn't come by default in After Effects, but it's completely free. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to download and install it. Here, where it says Position, I'm going to set the value to 4. And that way, we get this cool RGB effect. The thing is, I don't want it to affect the text that much. So I'm going to create a mask for this adjustment layer. More or less like that. I'll set it to subtract mode and increase the feathering to 200. This way, the text looks good, but we'll still maintain the effect in these areas. Okay, I'm also going to apply an effect called Fastbox Blur to these stars. Let's start with this one. Set it to a value of 5, for example. Although we could also do this with the camera's field blur, but it'll be much easier and give the animation a little depth. Copy it with Ctrl+C and paste it onto the star with Ctrl+V again. We also have another one down here, Ctrl+V. And also on this one at the end, select it and Ctrl+V. Okay, there it is. Perfect. Finally, we're going to select all the layers and activate motion blur. Although it's not necessary on the nulls and adjustment layers, but that's fine too. Now that we've added the sound effects, the animation is finished and working perfectly. I know this has been a very long tutorial, so if you get stuck on any step or there's something you don't understand, please write to me in the comments and we'll fix it. And if you liked the tutorial, leave me a big thumbs up so I know. See you in the next video.